The Clockmaker's Garden by Dreamsmith. Stories that drift. In a quiet village nestled between old hills and whispering woods, there lived a man named Elliot, the clockmaker. Elliot's workshop stood at the edge of town, where cobblestone met meadow, and it smelled always of cedar and oil. Inside, tiny gears ticked in harmony, and clocks of every shape adorned the shelves. Grandfather clocks, cuckoo clocks, carriage clocks, and delicate pocket watches, each ticking their own story into the silence. Elliot was known for his quiet hands and kinder heart. He lived alone, not out of loneliness, but out of deep love for the quiet. He had long ago discovered that time, when listened to closely, had a rhythm like music. Each hour, each second, hummed a lullaby. Some villagers thought it odd that he never seemed to age. Others said it was because he understood time in a way no one else did. But there was one thing Elliot never spoke of, one place no villager had ever seen. Behind his workshop, past a narrow gate made of iron vines, lay a garden. No one had ever been allowed inside. And yet, late at night, villagers walking past swore they could smell lavender, jasmine, and roses drifting on the air. Some even claimed to hear soft chimes, as though the wind was telling secrets. Each evening, after polishing the brass face of a mantel clock or repairing a finicky spring, Elliot would step into the garden and close the gate behind him. There, the world shifted. The garden didn't obey the rules of the village, or even the rules of nature. Trees bloomed in midnight hues, petals shimmered with stardust, and soft glowing orbs floated gently like lanterns suspended in the dusk. Flowers opened when Elliot approached, as if listening for his thoughts. In the center of the garden stood a peculiar tree. Its bark looked like dark velvet, and its leaves turned with the seasons. But not the village's seasons. No, these were the seasons of dreams. Sometimes the tree bloomed with gentle blue blossoms that smelled like lullabies. Other times, its branches would hang with silvery vines that played tiny harp notes in the breeze. Elliot called it the dream tree. The garden, he believed, was not planted. It had arrived. Long ago, as a boy, Elliot had discovered an old pocket watch buried in the woods behind his father's shop. When he wound it, the air shifted. Colours grew richer. Sounds became layered with echoes that didn't belong to this world. That night, the garden had appeared. Decades passed. Elliot tended to his clocks and to his dream garden in equal measure. Every night, he sat beneath the dream tree with a cup of tea and a journal, listening. Not with his ears, with his heart. He'd discovered that the garden responded to emotion. When he was content, the lilies rang with little tones, like distant wind chimes. When he was melancholy, fog would curl gently around the roots of the trees. When he was curious, new pathways would appear, paths he swore had never been there before. One evening, Elliot noticed something strange. A flower he had never seen before had bloomed near the dream tree. It was small, delicate, with petals like parchment and a faint golden glow. As he leaned closer, it whispered. Yes, whispered. Not in words, but in a feeling of homesickness for a place you've never been, and joy that made your chest ache. He named it the first memory. That night, the garden showed him a new path. Winding and narrow, it led deeper than he'd ever gone. Trees bowed low over the trail, and lights flickered in the mist. Stars? Fireflies? Memories? At the end of the path stood a sundial, but this sundial had no shadow. Instead, it glowed faintly and pulsed, like the beat of a slow heart. Elliot touched it, and the world stopped. The clocks in his shop, the wind in the trees, even the sound of his own breath. He stood in a place beyond time. Then he heard it. A voice, not quite a voice, speaking inside him. Time is not a river. It is a garden. It grows where you tend it, and withers when you forget to dream. He blinked, and the world resumed. The sundial remained, but dimmed. He returned to the garden, more careful now. Each night the path appeared, and each time the sundial said nothing. But Elliot understood. The garden was alive. Not just alive, but sentient, not only of this world. And it needed him. Soon, Elliot began placing pieces of his memories into the garden. A silver thimble from his mother, a page from his childhood journal, a worn button from his first coat. Each time he left something, a new flower would bloom, each one with a scent that brought him back to that moment. And each flower gave something in return, a sense of peace, a sudden idea, a vivid dream. The garden, he realized, was storing him, not like a museum, but like a promise. One spring, when the skies over the village were especially kind, a young girl came to Elliot's shop. Her name was Lila, and she had bright eyes and a necklace with a tiny compass on it. "My grandfather said you fix broken time," she said, holding out a pocket watch that hadn't ticked in years. Elliot smiled. "I help time remember where it was meant to go." He fixed the watch, of course, but more than that, he saw something in Lila, a glimmer, a softness, the same look he'd had once. She began visiting often, watching him work, asking questions, laughing at the way the cuckoo clockbird always got stuck halfway out. She reminded Elliot of forgotten things. One day, he gave her the pocket watch he'd found as a boy, the one that had started it all. She turned it in her hands. "It's warm," she said. He only smiled. That night, when he entered the garden, it was waiting. The dream tree had shed its petals, and in their place were seeds, shimmering, weightless, floating gently in the air. Elliot knew. His time was nearing its end, but he was not sad. He gathered the seeds into a small satchel, tied with twine and stardust, and placed it by the dream tree's roots. And then, for the first time, he whispered a request. "Let someone find this garden when I'm gone. Someone who will listen." The garden was silent. Then a single flower bloomed where he stood, a soft white bloom with petals like moonlight. Weeks passed. Elliot grew slower. The clocks in his shop seemed gentler in their ticking. The villagers noticed he no longer came to market days. Lila visited, and though he smiled, there was something behind his eyes, like a story nearing its last chapter. One evening, he didn't come out to lock the gate. By morning, the villagers found the workshop silent, the tools in perfect order. Elliot's journal lay open on the bench, the ink barely dry. It read, "When the garden listens, time no longer matters. I've left the clocks behind, but listen closely, and you'll hear me in the chimes." He was gone, but not lost. Lila, now older, took over the shop. She still wears the compass necklace, and sometimes, late at night, she steps into the garden. Because the gate was never locked, only hidden, until you're ready to hear time whisper. The garden blooms still, the dream tree hums, and in the soft rustling of its leaves, Elliot's voice drifts like wind through petals. Time is not a river, it is a garden, and dreams are the seeds we leave behind. End. A Dreamsmith original. Stories that drift.